I heard it the way you hear a glass shatter in another room. Sharp, sudden, and impossible to ignore. The words came not from strangers, not from television, but from a bank officer sitting across from me with a neat folder of papers. Sir, your account has been flagged for unusual activity. $90,000, multiple transfers, a credit line opened in your name. My chest tightened, but I did not say anything yet. My pulse drummed so loud it was almost embarrassing. I leaned forward, scanning the documents, and there it was in black ink, my own name signed in a handwriting that looked almost like mine. Almost. The curl of the letters was wrong. The tilt of the T, the way the loops stretched too wide. And then it hit me like a blade sliding under the ribs. This was my wife's handwriting. Before we begin, make sure you subscribe to this channel, like this video, and hit the bell notification for more shocking and suspenseful true life stories. I walked out of that bank with papers clutched in my hands, the Florida heat pressing down like a punishment, my mind running in circles. My wife Anna had signed my name to steal $90,000. She had not asked. She had not hinted. She had stolen my identity clean, like a thief in the night, except she had done it while making me coffee in the morning and smiling across the dinner table. The betrayal stung worse than the money. The money was numbers. Her smile had been my anchor. I did not go home right away. I could not. Instead, I parked near the pier where fishermen shouted and pelicans hovered for scraps. I sat in my truck with the AC blasting and stared at the stack of papers. My hands shook now. My wife had lived in my house, eaten meals I paid for, shared a bed with me, and all that time she was carving my name into debt. I thought about the small signs I had ignored, the new handbags she brushed off as cheap finds, the expensive wine that appeared in the fridge, the endless deliveries on our doorstep that she claimed were discounted. The more I thought about it, the clearer the pattern became. She was not careless. She was deliberate. And suddenly, every small memory twisted itself into something darker. The late-night phone calls she silenced, the receipts she shoved into the bottom of the trash, the locked drawer in her desk she said was just old recipes. By the time I pulled into our driveway that night, my decision was made. I was not going to shout. I was not going to accuse. I was going to let her trap herself with her own lies. I placed the papers on the kitchen counter, face down, and waited. She came in humming, smelling of perfume I could not name, her heels clicking against the floor. She kissed my cheek lightly as if nothing in the world was wrong. "How was your day?" she asked, dropping her purse onto a chair. I studied her face, the arch of her brows, the casual smile. A stranger wearing my wife's skin. My mouth felt dry, but I forced the words out evenly. "Busy," I said. "Yours." She shrugged, poured herself a glass of wine, and started talking about her friend Claire's new baby shower plans. Every word felt like theater, like she was reciting lines from a play while the truth sat burning in my pocket. That night, when she went upstairs, I opened her purse. I had never done that before. My hands trembled as I unzipped the side pocket. Inside was a folded slip of paper, an ATM receipt from an account I did not recognize. The balance was just over $90,000. My stomach turned cold. I put it back exactly where I found it, zipped the bag carefully, and sat in the living room until the clock read midnight. Upstairs, I heard her moving, humming again softly as she brushed her teeth. That humming, that careless tune, it made my jaw ache with anger. I did not sleep. I stared at the ceiling, listening to her breathing beside me, wondering how a person could betray someone so deeply and still sleep like a child. The next morning, I made a quiet decision. I was not going to confront her yet. I was not going to give her the chance to spin another story. I was going to build proof, piece by piece, until there was no escape. Because when the time came, I wanted her to see the police report in my hand, and I wanted to watch her smile vanish. And in that silence, with her sleeping beside me, the seed of revenge took root. The sun rose the next morning, but I felt no warmth. I moved through the kitchen like a shadow, making coffee and eggs the way I always did, but my eyes never left her. Anna sat across from me in her silk robe, flipping through her phone, smiling at texts, laughing under her breath. To anyone else it would look normal, just a wife having breakfast. To me it looked like a criminal sitting in plain sight. I stirred my coffee slowly, watching the steam curl upward. I thought about the receipt hidden in her purse, the account that did not belong to me, the balance that matched the fraud. $90,000. That number played in my head like a bell. She asked if I was going to work early. I nodded, but in truth I had already taken a day off. She kissed my cheek, grabbed her bag, and walked out the door humming the same careless tune. I watched her car pull away, then I moved quickly. I went to her desk, the one drawer she always kept locked. I had tried once before to open it, years ago, when I thought she was hiding a birthday gift for me. Now I knew it was not gifts. I pried the lock open with a flathead screwdriver, my palms sweating. Inside were folders stacked neatly, too neatly. Receipts, contracts, and credit card statements with my name printed at the top. My name, but not my signature. Her loops and curls. Page after page of my stolen identity, used like a weapon. I sank into the chair, flipping through the files, feeling my pulse hammer in my temples. It was all here. Proof. Enough to end everything. Enough to take her straight to jail. But then I paused. At the very bottom of the stack was something different. A small notebook, leather-bound, worn at the edges. I opened it carefully. The first page hit me like a blade to the gut. It was a list. A list of names, amounts, and dates. People I did not know, numbers in the thousands, all checked off. The handwriting was hers. At the bottom of the page, underlined twice, was my name. Beside it, 90,000. I closed the book and sat frozen. She had not just stolen from me. She had done this before, maybe to others, maybe to friends or strangers. And I was next on her list, like prey waiting for the trap. I placed everything back exactly where I found it, relocked the drawer, and wiped the sweat from my palms. My breath came shallow and fast. If she knew I had seen this, she would hide it. If she knew I was watching, she would change her game. I had to be smarter than her. So I planned. That day, instead of going to work, I drove to the police station. I did not walk in. Not yet. I sat in the parking lot, staring at the door, debating with myself. If I handed this over, it was the end of my marriage, the end of everything I had built with her. But if I did not, she would bleed me dry and smile while doing it. Finally, I drove away. Not because I was afraid of the police, but because I was not ready for the end. Not yet. I wanted to watch her fall, and I wanted her to know I was the one who pulled the ground out from under her. That night, when she returned home, she smiled like nothing was wrong. She poured herself wine, sat beside me on the couch, and rested her head on my shoulder. My skin crawled at her touch, but I stayed still. She talked about vacations, about plans for the future, about love. And all I could see was the list with my name written at the bottom. I whispered goodnight when we went to bed. She whispered it back, her voice soft, her breathing steady as she drifted into sleep. But I stayed awake, staring at the ceiling again, my jaw clenched, my heart beating like a drum of war. Because now I knew. I was not just her husband. I was her next target. And soon, she would realize that I was not prey. I was the trap waiting to close. The following days passed in silence. But in that silence, I built my plan. I became an actor in my own home, wearing the mask of a husband who trusted his wife, while inside I carried the rage of a man betrayed. Every smile she gave me felt like poison, every laugh like a reminder that she believed she had me fooled. I began watching her more closely. She had patterns, routines that I never noticed before. Every Thursday afternoon she disappeared for 3 hours, claiming she was meeting friends. Every Saturday morning she went for a drive, alone, never saying where. I pretended to accept her excuses, but I followed quietly. The first time I tailed her, I felt like my chest might burst with fear. What if she looked back and saw me? What if she realized I was behind her? But she never did. She drove to a small cafe on the edge of town, not the kind of place she ever told me about. I parked across the street, kept my head low, and waited. Through the window, I saw her sit with a man in a dark jacket. Not a friend, not family. They spoke in whispers, leaning close, their eyes sharp and calculating. I could not hear their words, but I could see the envelope she slid across the table, and I could see the way he nodded as he tucked it away. Money. My money. I clenched the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. She was not working alone. She had someone else in this game. When she left, I followed again, careful to stay far behind. She drove to a quiet neighborhood, parked outside a house I did not recognize, and went inside. She stayed there for 2 hours. When she finally came out, she looked relaxed, smiling, like she had just left a meeting where the world bent to her will. That night, at home, she cooked dinner and laughed as if nothing had happened. I watched her hands move gracefully with the knife, slicing vegetables, And I thought how easily those same hands had signed my name on papers worth more than I could ever save in a lifetime. I needed evidence. Real evidence. Watching was not enough. So the next morning, while she was in the shower, I took her phone. My hands shook as I scrolled, heart racing as though I was stealing from her, though she had stolen everything from me. Messages, emails, pictures, transfers. It was all there. Accounts under my name, transfers made without my consent, messages to people I had never met. She had documented her own betrayal, piece by piece, without fear. But one message froze me cold. It was a draft email she had not yet sent. In it, she spoke of me. How I was getting suspicious, how she might need to move quicker, how she could not risk me finding out before the final transfer. The final transfer. I dropped the phone onto the bed and backed away like it had burned me. She was planning something bigger, something that would end me completely. The 90,000 was just the beginning. I had no choice anymore. If I waited, I would lose everything. If I moved too soon, I would risk her slipping away. I needed timing, proof, and precision. That night, I sat across from her at dinner, forcing myself to chew while she talked about her day. She smiled at me, the same soft smile she had worn for years, and in that moment I realized she was dangerous. Not just careless, not just greedy. Dangerous. She thought she had the upper hand. She thought I was blind. But I was done watching. I was ready to strike back. I woke up the next morning with a decision carved into my chest like stone. I was not going to sit quietly any longer. I had the evidence. I had the knowledge, and now I needed to set the trap. She had turned our marriage into a stage for her lies, but I was about to write the final act. I drove to the police station again, this time with her files tucked into a plain folder under my arm. The officer at the desk looked at me as if I was just another man filing a complaint, but when I slid the folder across to him, his eyes narrowed. He flipped through the pages slowly, his brow tightening as he saw the signatures, the accounts, the notebook with names. I explained everything, piece by piece, careful not to let my voice shake. He asked me if I was ready to press charges. My mouth felt dry as dust, but I nodded. Yes, I said, I am ready. The officer assured me they would open an investigation, but he warned me to keep calm, to act normal at home. They needed her to make one more move, something they could catch in real time. I walked out of the station feeling both lighter and heavier. Lighter because I was no longer alone. Heavier because now everything depended on me playing my role perfectly. That evening when Anna walked in, she was radiant, carrying shopping bags filled with clothes and perfume. She twirled once in the living room, asking if I liked the dress she had bought. I smiled and said she looked beautiful, my voice smooth, my face calm. Inside I burned with the knowledge that she had probably paid for it with my name, my credit, my future. Over the next week, I became an actor in the most dangerous play of my life. I laughed when she laughed. I held her hand. I kissed her goodnight, all while knowing that the walls were closing in around her. The police had set up surveillance, quiet and hidden, waiting for her next move. I had given them the dates of her secret meetings, the times of her vanishing acts. Thursday came, and as usual she left the house in the afternoon. I followed at a distance, my hands sweating against the steering wheel, knowing that plainclothes officers were trailing too. She arrived at the same cafe, met the same man, and this time the exchange was larger, bolder. I could not hear the words, but I saw her slide a thicker envelope across the table. She was confident, too confident. What she did not know was that the man she trusted had already been marked. The police were watching him as closely as they were watching her. Later that night, she returned home humming, poured herself wine, and asked me how my day had been. I smiled and said it was fine, hiding the storm building inside me. I asked her casually if she had plans for Saturday, and she lied without flinching, saying she wanted us to go shopping together. I nodded, though I already knew she would not be with me on Saturday. She would be at that house again, the one I had followed her to. Saturday came. I kissed her goodbye as she left, pretending to believe her story. Minutes later I was in my car, following her once more, and this time I knew every turn was being tracked by the police as well. When she parked outside that house and walked in, I stayed in my car. My phone buzzed with a short message from the officer I had spoken with. Stay put. We are moving in. My chest felt like it was caving in as I watched two unmarked cars roll up silently. Men in plain clothes stepped out, moving swiftly toward the house. My heart pounded with every second that passed, every muffled sound from inside. And then, like a crack of thunder, The door swung open and Anna was let out, her wrists locked in cuffs, her face pale, but still trying to hold a smile. She spotted me across the street. For the first time, her smile faltered. She knew. She knew I had been the one to pull the ground from beneath her feet. And as she was placed in the back of the car, I felt the strangest thing. Not relief, not anger, but an icy calm. This was only the beginning. The holding room was colder than I expected. The walls were plain, the light overhead harsh, buzzing faintly like it was alive. I sat in the chair, my hands folded tightly in my lap, waiting. I had not seen her since they put her in the back of that car, but now the officers had allowed me to speak with her before the formal questioning began. When the door opened, Anna walked in with her hands cuffed in front of her. Her hair was a mess, her lipstick smudged, yet she still tried to carry herself with that same calm elegance she always wore. Her eyes found mine instantly, sharp and unyielding, as if she could still bend me with a look. She sat down across from me, leaned back in her chair, and smiled. That same smile she had used 1,000 times to disarm me, to make me believe her lies. I stayed quiet for a moment, letting the silence hang between us. I wanted her to feel it, the weight of everything she had done pressing down on the room. Finally, I leaned forward, sliding a folded piece of paper across the table. She tilted her head, curious. She picked it up, unfolded it, and her smile widened. It was a copy of one of the receipts she had signed with my name. She laughed softly, almost mockingly. "Is this what you think will break me?" she said. "A piece of paper." I looked her dead in the eyes, my voice steady, my anger wrapped in ice. "This is not a piece of paper. This is a police report." Her smile cracked. For the first time since this nightmare began, I saw fear flicker across her face. She shifted in her chair, her fingers tightening around the edge of the receipt. The silence stretched on, thick and heavy. I watched her mask fall piece by piece, the charm slipping, the control crumbling. She tried to speak, to reach for excuses, but the words caught in her throat. "You used me," I said slowly. "You turned my name into your weapon, my life into your game. And now it is over." Her lips trembled, and I saw the truth in her eyes. She had never believed I would fight back. She had never thought I was capable of turning the tables. She thought she would walk away with everything, smiling until the end. But this was the end, and she knew it. The officers stepped back into the room, asking me to leave so they could begin their questioning. I stood, my chair scraping softly against the floor. As I walked past her, she whispered my name, desperate, almost pleading. I did not stop. I did not look back. Because for the first time in years, I was no longer her victim. And for the first time, she realized it. The next few days passed in a blur of court papers, police interviews, and restless nights. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face from that room, the moment her smile finally cracked. But it was not over yet. The investigation was only beginning, and the truth had layers I was not prepared for. Detective Harris called me in on Tuesday morning. He was a tall man, with a calm voice that always seemed to carry weight. He slid a folder across the table toward me. Inside were bank statements, transaction histories, and even more forged documents. "She did not just open accounts in your name," he said. "She opened them in her sister's name, in her mother's, even in the names of people who do not exist. This is bigger than we thought." My stomach twisted as I flipped through the pages. Each number, each transaction, felt like a knife. She had been running her own empire of lies right under my nose. "We believe she was planning to move the money offshore," the detective continued. "And we think she had help." That word echoed in my head. Help. It made sense. She could not have done all of this alone. Someone had to be guiding her. Someone had to know the system well enough to avoid detection this long. The question was, who? At the preliminary hearing, Anna walked in wearing a plain gray jumpsuit, her wrists shackled, her face pale but composed. Yet when her eyes met mine across the courtroom, I saw something new. Not charm, not arrogance. Panic. The prosecutor laid out the charges in careful detail. Wire fraud, identity theft, forgery, over $90,000 stolen under false pretenses. Each word cut through the courtroom like a blade. Anna kept her gaze fixed on the table, her hands clenched. When it was her turn to speak, she tried to recover that same calm voice she always used to manipulate people. She claimed she was misunderstood, that it was a mistake, that she was only trying to protect us from debts I did not know about. But the evidence spoke louder. After the session, I walked out into the cool air, my heart heavy but steady. For the first time, the law was no longer on her side. For the first time, she was cornered. That night, I received a phone call I did not expect. The voice on the other end was low, nervous. It was a man I had never heard before. "You need to know something about your wife," he said. "She is not working alone." Before I could ask his name, the line went dead. I sat in silence, the weight of his words pressing down on me. If Anna had a partner, if this was bigger than I imagined, then everything I thought I knew about her crimes was only the surface. And now I had to decide. Did I dig deeper into this darkness, or step back before it consumed me too? The next morning, I could not shake the voice from the phone call. It kept replaying in my head. She is not working alone. That meant everything I had seen so far was only half the truth. I called Detective Harris and told him about the call. He listened carefully, then nodded. "We already suspected that. Your wife had connections, and we think one of them might be closer than you realize." Closer. That word chilled me. Later that afternoon, Harris asked me to come down to the station. He had something to show me. When I entered the small gray room, he laid another file on the table. Inside were surveillance photos. My breath caught when I saw them. Anna was sitting at a cafe weeks before her arrest, laughing with a man I recognized. It was her cousin Mark. Mark had always been around. He was the kind of man who drifted from job to job, always needing money, always borrowing. I never trusted him, but Anna defended him every time. Now, seeing those photos, everything clicked. Mark had the skills Anna never had. He worked in IT for a short time, long enough to learn about networks and accounts. He was the missing piece. "We believe he was helping her create the accounts and move the money," Harris explained. "And now, with her in custody, he may try to run." That night, I sat in my living room, staring at the empty chair where Anna used to sit. The house felt colder, darker. My phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. "You ruined everything. Meet me tomorrow night, or the truth comes out." There was no name, but I knew it was Mark. I did not reply. Instead, I called Harris. He told me to play along, to set the meeting, and they would be ready. My heart pounded as I agreed. The next night, I walked into a quiet parking lot behind an old warehouse. The air was heavy, the silence broken only by the hum of streetlights. Mark stepped out from the shadows, his face hard, his eyes sharp. "You think you won," he hissed. But she was never the mastermind. I was. She was just the face. I pulled the strings. Hearing it out loud made my stomach twist. All this time, the woman I thought I knew was only half of the monster. The real enemy was standing right in front of me. Before I could respond, the sound of tires screeched. Police cars surrounded us, lights flashing. Mark froze, his hands rising as Harris stepped out. It was over. As they dragged him away, he spat words at me. "You think this is done, but you do not know everything she kept from you." His voice echoed in my mind long after the sirens faded. That night, I sat alone in my kitchen, the weight of betrayal pressing down harder than ever. I had exposed the fraud, faced my wife, and uncovered her partner. But the story was not finished. Because Mark was right. There were still secrets buried deep in her lies, waiting to be uncovered. And I was not sure if I wanted to know them. 2 weeks passed after Mark's arrest, and for the first time, I felt the storm had passed. My days were quiet again. I drank my morning coffee without watching over my shoulder. I walked through my house without feeling like a stranger. But there was something I could not shake. Mark's words. "You do not know everything she kept from you." Late one evening, Detective Harris called me. "We found something in your wife's storage unit. You should come." The words froze me in place. I drove there in silence, my hands tight on the wheel. When I arrived, Harris led me inside. The unit was small, dusty, and smelled of old wood and mold. But in the back was a locked trunk. They had already pried it open. Inside were folders, receipts, and photographs. My chest tightened as I picked up one of the envelopes. Inside were copies of documents with my signature forged, not just from the fraud I already knew about, but from years back. Insurance papers, loan applications, even a rental agreement I had never seen. She had been using my name for longer than I ever guessed. But what shattered me was a small notebook tucked at the bottom of the trunk. On the first page was her handwriting. It was a plan, step by step, written years ago. Phase 1, get him to trust me with everything. Phase 2, drain accounts slowly. Phase 3, build a second life. And then, scribbled at the end, almost like an afterthought. If caught, blame Mark. I staggered back. Every laugh, every smile, every kiss, had been part of a script I was never meant to read. Harris rested a hand on my shoulder. I know this is hard, but you need to see it for what it is. She was planning this all along. As I stood there, I realized Mark had not lied. There were things even darker than I imagined. She had mapped out my downfall like a story, with no happy ending for me. And maybe, even now, she still thought she could twist her way free. The next week, I attended her hearing. She wore an orange jumpsuit, but she still carried that same smile, the smile that once fooled me. When her eyes met mine, she tilted her head as if daring me to forgive her. I did not smile back. When the judge read out the charges, her expression finally cracked. For the first time, I saw fear in her eyes. And that was enough for me. Later, walking out of the courthouse, I breathed in the cold air. I felt like I had been carrying a weight for years, and now I could finally let it go. I had lost a wife, but what I had really lost was the illusion of a life I thought was mine. The truth was harsher, but it was mine again. And I swore to myself, no one would ever write my story for me again.